Hi, everyone. Welcome to Startup and Scale Up People podcast. Here, you can learn how people build their dreams, businesses, and lives. I'm Barry Rivas, as you know me. And today I'm sat here with Steven Pivnik. He has done many things. He has run businesses, startups, like 50 plus millions end users. I don't know, like 1.1 billion enterprise value created with founders. Now he helps founders to do the exits with a massive experience. Of course, he has worked with all the big brands around the globe, with Microsoft, IBM, Dell, Airbus, etc., JP Morgan, and David. So we are quite excited to have a conversation today with you, Steven. I think you had a lot to say and a lot to share. And yeah, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Mario. I appreciate you having me on the show. Looking forward to our conversation.
Cool. Well, Steven, you are in the US, and you told me that you are living, very close to the beach. So, very good setup to have the right mindset to continue helping founders. But coming back or talking a little bit more about when you started, because you always talk about that you failed 2 startups. But then I was curious, like, what gave you the conviction to build Binary 3, right? And then, like running for the next 20 plus years?
Yeah, great question. I mean, the first 2 startups really was a very amateur attempt of entrepreneurship. I was incredibly young. I really didn't have a great picture of what it would take to truly build a business and to run a company. So after the first one failed, I figured, that was just bad luck. Let me just try this again. Tried it again, really didn't do too many things differently. Unfortunately, I just thought it was just bad luck and let me just try this again. That didn't work either. And then I, waited a couple of years and really just spoke with a lot of individuals and really gained a lot of knowledge and educated myself on what it would take to build a company that would potentially last, and really surrounded myself with some other, smart folks. Had several partners in the early stages of the company, and the third time is a charm. I have this philosophy of not quitting, so I was going to do the third time anyway. But the third time, this time, had a little bit of a plan behind it. I'm not going to say it was the best plan in the world, but we definitely figured it out third time around.
For how much do you sell the business? Can you talk about that? Or?
I won't tell you the valuation of the business, but I'll tell you that our revenue was over $40 million a year in sales. So it took a while, but we got it to over 40 million in revenue.
Oh, wow, so very good. Very, very good. Well, you built this company across 12 countries, right? And eventually sold it. Looking back, what were the 3 biggest decisions that created the most value enterprise value?
Great question. I'll tell you one of the mistakes. What could have created even more enterprise value was recurring revenue. Even though we had $40 million a year in revenue and we showed continuous growth year after year, we had very little recurring revenue. And that's a big driver of enterprise value. So we should have had more. But the things that did create recurring revenue was we had a great leadership team, and investors or acquirers always look for teams in addition to the product that they're buying. So I had a really strong leadership team in place, and we also had some great technology. So when you have highly differentiated technology, which competitors would have a hard time recreating, that creates enterprise value as well. So between the technology, great leadership team, and also our continuous revenue growth, that contributed to the enterprise value.
And this happened a few years ago, right?
This happened in 2020. So I can't believe it. It's going to be 6 years ago in September.
And what do you do now? What do you started doing? Well, after you did the only transition, handover, and you were free, basically.
Yeah, I was free. I benefited tremendously over the years from advisors that have helped me. I was part of an advisory program called the CEO Project. I also brought on a firm called the Crisis, to help me with my final years of scale and then exit. And I basically joined both of those organizations. I love providing advisory services to other entrepreneurs that are in the shoes that I was in, helping them go through the final stages of exit and preparing their company for sale. So you mentioned $1.1 billion. My partners and I, we have completed 30 38 exits over the last 8 years, totaling $1.1 billion in wealth generated for founders. So it's a really rewarding practice.
Why did you start doing that?
I was too young to retire, and I didn't have the, even though I still have plenty of energy left in me, I just didn't want to start from scratch again. So I felt it would be very challenging and rewarding, and keep my mind busy to work with other companies that are already past the startup phase in a scale phase that want to eventually exit.
And I believe in delegation and building, running the business without you. That's what I've been doing when I've been director of operations or CEO as well. How long it takes, this journey working with you to do a good exit?
On average, about 3 years. We've definitely done exits that have been quicker, and we've done some projects which have taken longer. It takes a while, to build up all of the valuation drivers, like you mentioned, in order for an acquirer to not create discounts. Like you mentioned, founder dependency. If a company has founder dependency, that doesn't disappear overnight. That takes a couple of years. If a company doesn't have enough recurring revenue, that needs to be addressed. If a company doesn't have enough of adequate, finance and accounting functions that are really sophisticated and mature, that takes several quarters to put into place. If a company doesn't have a good trailing 3 years of sales growth, well, we have to create 3 years of sales growth. So we want to make sure that when we bring a company to market and position it in front of potential acquirers, that everything is green, right? There's no yellow and there's no red on any of the dashboards. And that takes several years to accomplish sometimes.
Do you come in as a business advisor for the board?
Yeah, pretty much. That's exactly it. We don't take a board seat. We take an advisory seat on the board if there is a board. A lot of times there isn't an official board, which is fine. So we're just an advisor to the CEO, to the founder.
To the founder, right? Wow. Which has been the one key lesson that you think that founders have to learn, this process?
Yeah, I mean, founders need to learn that they need to surround themselves with people that have been in their shoes. I was guilty of this when I was running my own business for many, many years. I thought I knew everything, right? So my company, it's growing, we're successful. I established a relationship with IBM. I established a relationship with Microsoft. Only Steven knows everything. And that's a huge lie that founders tell themselves. There's definitely other people that have worked in your shoes, that have operated at your level and higher. And it's foolish not to bring on advisors to help go through this process.
Well, I was reading about you, and you just mentioned a few brands, right? Like Microsoft, IBM, and Google. When I was reading, I realized that you actually work with all the main brands around the globe, as I mentioned at the beginning, right? How do founders earn this trust of global enterprise customers?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, in my case, those were partnerships, right? Partnerships with IBM, Microsoft, Google. Our technology focused around email, and those three players were the leaders in the email market. IBM first, and then Microsoft, and then Google started on playing. So it was important for us because our technology focused on email, it was important for us to partner with the leaders in the email space. And as they were growing market share, we helped facilitate that growth. And we proved to them that we are a very capable partner and necessary for their continued journey. So that was the mission that we created for ourselves. Like that small fish that swims next to the shark and in the ocean. So the shark and then the fish always gets its food, from from the leftovers of the shark. Not that we were getting leftovers, but we made sure that we were swimming alongside the big sharks. And then to gain the trust of enterprise customers, you just have to do incredibly good work, bend over backwards for customer satisfaction, make sure that you deliver on what you promise, and slowly but surely, build a reputation for yourself, and do projects at sometimes, less than ideal profitability in order to gain those logos on your, customer reference sheet. And once those start building up, then the momentum will carry you forward to additional customers.
How many people do you have in your business in the end?
when we sold, we were just over 200 employees. We were doing business in about 20 different countries, maybe 25 countries, but our employees were in 12 countries. US, throughout Europe, throughout it.
Proper international operation. Huh? Congratulations to you. That would be amazing how you felt like you were achieving all those goals. It's amazing.
No, it was a lot of fun. I mean, I love to travel, and having to travel for business and having to travel to employee meetings and events and conferences and all that. And just dealing with all the various, cultures in the world was a very, very fun experience.
Steven, you just mentioned, we were talking about the key, I would say, key drivers, for valuation. But which one are the biggest one that founders overlook?
Yeah, I think they overlook founder dependency and how much that actually hurts valuation. They also overlook, dependent on customer concentration. Like in my case, it actually hurt me significantly. Microsoft was a huge, not only were they a partner of ours, they also accounted for 30% of our revenue. So that's a very high amount of revenue. So customer concentration is often overlooked because everything is working great. The customer's paying, we have a fantastic relationship, all the projects are continuously, coming in. But if there's a high concentration, that's going to represent risk to a buyer. Founders also overlook their relationship with some of their key employees because founders are very loyal individuals and they're very loyal to the people that started the company with them. But unfortunately, many folks, sometimes even the founder, they haven't matured to the level that the company has matured to. So somebody that started with you when you got up to like $1 million or $2 million in revenue, they're not, and then the company has grown to 10 or $15 million in revenue and they still have a leadership position. They don't have any experience running a business at that level. And it's not their fault. They just don't have the experience. And founders are sometimes blind to this.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Huh?
That's a really tough one.
It's a tough one. And you help founders to do exits. You've been doing more than 38, I heard. Looking from the other side, from the acquirers, which are like the most, can you tell one or two lessons in terms of negotiation? Because you've been on those tables, right? That how much you can, push hard, or to know the limit. We know when you say if we don't close it now, they're not gonna buy it. We cannot push for more price. Do you have like one or two good stories that you don't need to mention the companies, but you can
Yeah.
tell to the audience?
Yeah, I mean the acquirers, it's really interesting. Some acquirers, every single deal is different. In some deals, the acquirer has the majority of the leverage because, right, they're the ones that are holding the check. They're holding the cash, the stock, whatever. In other positions, the seller has the leverage because they have something super unique. It's very profitable, very hard to recreate, and they have the majority of the leverage. And it really boils down to the negotiation and trying to figure out exactly what the motivating factors are on both sides. The acquirer needs to figure out, why do you want to sell and why now, right? So sellers need to have the right answer in order not to, show their cards. If there's some sort of desperation that is sensed by the buyer, a sophisticated buyer will sense that and take advantage of it. Right. So it's really important for sellers not to show desperation if there is any, and to make sure that, like I mentioned earlier, every single area and every KPI, every chart is in the green, not the yellow, not the red. Otherwise, it's just going to create leverage for the buyer to continue to discount the price.
And how long it takes this negotiation generally?
Yeah, so negotiations, I mean, it all varies, right? So if you have a good investment banker, which I highly recommend, every single transaction should have a proper advisor and a proper investment banking firm that understands the industry. If the investment banking firm is doing their job right, it's going to take them 3 to 6 months to put together the proper package on how to, sell the business. Then it's going to take another 3 months to share that package with potential acquirers, both strategic and financial. And then it's going to take about a month for negotiations to take place with, letters of intent, letters of interest, MOUs, etc. And then due diligence starts. And if you have a really, really buttoned up organization and you're super, super organized and efficient, due diligence, shouldn't take more than 2 months. I mean, we were so incredibly efficient. Like we had one of the fastest deals my advisors said that ever happened. We did due diligence in 30 days. But most due diligence take, 60 to 90 days, sometimes a little bit longer. And it's one of my many pieces of advice is have a finance and accounting function which is so incredibly organized that you can provide information very quickly to the person that's requesting it on the acquirer side, because the longer the deal goes on, the greater the chance of the deal falling apart. Because everybody says, time kills all deals. And it's very, very true in the mergers and acquisition space.
Now, do you work only for founders or do you work also for investors?
Mainly founders. And our tagline is "We speak founder." So,
have you been in the dark side of the?
Yeah, we speak founder. I mean, sometimes the founders have investors in the business, but rarely. Like our ideal customer is a first-time founder, has been in business for 10 years, doing over $10 million in revenue, doesn't have outside investors, and this is their first exit.
That's around the globe or only in the US?
Actually, on both sides of the Atlantic. So we have partners that work as part of our organization in the UK and throughout Europe as well.
Okay, cool. So with that, because in the UK also, well, Europe in general, but in the UK a little bit more, a lot of new startups and like who need help, from someone like you. That's why I was asking. You also wrote a book, right, called Built to Finish?
Yep, it's right there. Built to Finish. I did.
And what actually mean Built to Finish, if you can?
Yeah,
a little bit.
Sure. So I had two really big goals. My business goal was to sell my business for a very specific amount of money. And one of my biggest hobbies is endurance sports. I love Ironman distance triathlons, mountain climbing, and ultra marathons. My big endurance goal was to qualify for and compete in the Ironman World Championship in Kona, Hawaii. So when I finished that goal, which was only about a year after selling my company, so I basically finished my company goal and I finished my endurance goal, I wrote a book called Built to Finish, where I document my journey and offer advice and tips and tricks to encourage others to really set big goals and to dream big and to go after audacious goals.
That's amazing. I wanted to touch this topic about endurance and also all the races that you have done in the Ironman. You attempted the Everest as well, and I feel I'm into sports a lot now. I play tennis though, 2-3 times a week, and then I go to a gym the other 3 or 4. So basically, I do sports every single day.
Great.
And since then, I feel like so good. And now because of the World Cup and Wimbledon, I'm drinking more, right? Because of it's like football, and I feel like, oh my God, I don't want to drink. Actually, today I have a friend who raised 3 million. He's doing a small gathering, for investors and partners and friends. So I'm gonna go, but I'm not gonna drink. And it's because I see the impact of drinking is so bad now. When I'm going to get very fit, like decreasing the fat and all of that. And also I'm sleeping well, eating healthy, and like counting the calories, everything. And I feel like, oh my God, I feel so good, so energetic. And when I saw that, I said, oh my God, but this is another level. Like, guys, another level. Like doing Ironman and attempting the Everest. So like, this is crazy.
But unfortunately, drinking is a problem. I mean, I wish I told you I was perfect in the drinking category. I'm originally from Eastern Europe. My family, I was born in what is now the Ukraine, the former Soviet Union. Most of my friends are from there as well, and it's just part of our culture, right? So I wish it played less of a role in my life, but it's there, and I just try to control it as much as possible.
Yeah, no, me too. Today I had a meeting at lunch in Bayfair, and they said like, "Would you like some shot of tequilas?" It's like, no, can you imagine like at midday on a Thursday? But I love tequila, and I love doing this thing. I love this like, yeah, why not? Or let's have a glass of wine. Why not? I love that too, right?
Yeah.
Enjoying life. But is it possible? Is it possible to do everything like? Well, and why I wanted to touch this topic, Steven, is because nowadays, aging, wellness, fitness is very important for the founders and C-suite. And we see every time more and more and more founders who are successful, who are very with high performance, right? They actually eat well. They train every day. They work hard. They leave time for socializing. They leave time for family. So very, like I say, very well balanced life by working very hard and training a lot. And that for me, and I know this in my case, probably it's too much for some people. They say that it's too much, but I think I feel energized and I feel good and I sleep well and I look good as well. So I like that, right? But from your angle, from your view, what do you think that now you are doing this? Like when you have, I might have a very good economical situation after all of these things you have done in life, and then you say, you know what, I'm going to also keep myself, a high performance, doing endurance, and also, working with like complicated businesses, right? Like helping them to do an exit.
Yeah.
How you keep all this pressure basically on your shoulders?
Yeah, I mean, I love the benefit that staying in shape and participating in endurance sports has in the business world, right? Because both have a lot of similarities: preparation, execution, planning, pivots, setbacks, decisions, leadership. If you perform in endurance sports, all of those become really, really important. And if you do it well, all of those elements are also important in the business world. And then successes in one can lead to successes in the other. One example is, in the former days of the company, it was, as with most startups, there's some months where you can't make payroll. It's very hard to make payroll. You just don't have enough money in the bank for the next payroll to come up. Well, and magically, every single time that happens, you come around the corner and you make payroll, you figure it out. And then you apply that if you're in an endurance race. Let's say you're on, kilometer 60 of a 100-kilometer race, and you really have nothing left in the tank, and you really think you want to quit and there's nothing left. And then you think back of how you made payroll. It was impossible to make payroll, and yet 5 days later, you made payroll. And all of a sudden, you get a burst of energy saying, you know what, I'm just going to go 5 more kilometers to the next aid station. We'll get some food, and we'll see how I feel then. And magically, you get to the next aid station, have a little bit of drink, have some food, and then you continue running for until the end of the 100K race. So the two feed on each other very, very nicely, and they're very complementary.
Yeah. And do you advise this to the founders too? Like like you're an advisor there I'm a business advisor for 2 startups, but early stage, no doing exit and nothing like that. It's more like strategy operations, a little bit of everything because of my background. And I tend to say like, hey, you look very tired. Or, what are you eating? Or like, it feels that you are not doing well. And start talking about this. Do you also do that? Do you speak about how important it's like, eating well, doing exercise, sleeping well, treating yourself, better?
Yeah, I mean,
I
I bring that up all the time. I mean, I share my, my personal experiences, my personal lifestyle, my personal schedule. I mean, my personal schedule is scary to most people. So I don't anticipate anybody to train with the quantity that I train. But you know what? When you hang around a certain type of individual for a long amount of time, you start to mimic, some of their habits. So I love the fact that a little bit of me, rubs off on folks that I advise, because again, I've actually had, several folks that I've worked with that have never done a triathlon that have actually started doing triathlons, and they love it for all the reasons that I mentioned. It gets them into a, much better mental state. It gets them healthier, and it gets them better prepared to deal with the business day. So again, I encourage it as much as possible, but I don't push, because it's a very, very, touchy subject to really be really pushy on, because it's tough. It's tough for most people.
Yeah, no, it's tough. We're talking too much about this anyway, but it's tough, and it is. People talk about discipline, right? And it's like it's just a muscle. It's a muscle, right? Because it's difficult at the beginning, but once you start at the 3, 6, then after like 6 months, 9 months, then it starts to become, something that is in your life. It's like, brushing your teeth, right? So then you don't do it, and you feel like, oh my God, something is going wrong, or I don't feel good. So I'm gonna go for a run. I'm gonna go to the gym. So I will encourage everyone basically to get into these routines. Changing a little bit the topic. AI is changing everything, right? Every industry, that. How do you think that it will change acquisitions, due diligence, and company valuation over the next decade?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. I wish I had a crystal ball to answer all of those questions. I mean, due diligence is going to go a lot faster, I think, because AI is going to analyze everything that the buyer needs analyzed a lot quicker. But it's not perfect, right? So in some cases, it's going to make mistakes and it's going to miss things. And in other cases, it's going to create problems where problems don't exist, right? And so it's maybe at the end of the day, it's going to be neutral in a net neutral effect from a due diligence perspective. From a valuation perspective, I think buyers are going to really analyze IP and the differentiators that companies have to see if that differentiation can be lessened in the future by somebody else that's using AI better, right? So companies that are selling need to defend their differentiation in a world of AI. And at the same time, they need to incorporate AI as much as possible because every customer, every acquirer, every customer wants to buy a solution that is AI enabled or has an AI component to it. And every acquirer probably wants to buy a company or solution that is heavily utilizing AI, whether from the human aspect of it or from a technology aspect of it. So it's just a new normal that we have to deal with all the time.
I know it's incredible how important it is right now, and how much more productive we are thanks to AI. But do you think that I will increase acquisitions or
I don't think AI itself is going to increase the pace of mergers and acquisitions. I just think AI is going to create a ton more opportunity than was available before AI. So there's going to be a lot more companies starting up. There's also going to be a lot more companies failing. The ones that don't incorporate it soon enough, that they feel anybody listening or out there that feels that AI is just a fad and it's going to go away and I don't need to incorporate AI into my business, they're making a huge mistake because I have an example of actually a customer who AI is completely destroying their business because what they were offering is now easily accessible just by really good prompt engineering by employees. So it's really unfortunate. I mean, fortunately, they're pivoting. They're doing things a little bit differently, which is great. But it's a real threat out there for a lot of companies.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I didn't think about that actually, but yeah, you nailed it there. And for founders, because you work with founders and help them to do the exits, and we talk about delegation, right? When do you think that founders should replace themselves?
As soon as possible. And I don't just say that from an advisory perspective. I say that because I replaced myself. I wanted to make sure that when I sold my business, that I had zero founder dependency. So I wanted to make sure that I score 100 in that category. And I've been running my company for so long that I just didn't want to do it anymore. I loved my company. It was literally my first child. My first daughter wasn't born until after I started my company. So it was my first baby, but it was 26 years. I was ready for the next phase of my life. So I wanted to make sure that when the acquisition closed, that I wasn't responsible for staying on board at all. So I brought on it's hard for a lot of founders to completely give up control and to bring in a CEO to run their company. So what I did was I brought on a COO, and the promise was if everything worked out, then in a year's time, I would make him CEO. Well, instead of a year, it only took me 90 days to figure out that I liked him, I trusted him, and the team respected him. And he was making incredible decisions for the benefit of the company that I wouldn't make. So I promoted myself to executive chairman, and I fired myself from my day job, promoted myself to executive chairman, and made him CEO to run my company for 3 years before the final exit.
Oh, that sounds very good story.
I'm sorry, when they have to hire what?
Executives.
Oh, I mean, it becomes really obvious that if they have too much on their plate in any one given area, they need to delegate immediately. If a founder finds themselves participating in every single sales call or the majority of the sales calls, they need an executive to run head of sales, right? If they find themselves, knee deep in their P&L and in their accounting books all the time, and because the financial staff, just aren't doing a good enough job, they need to hire a finance executive or a CFO. And the same goes for every other function. The more time a founder spends in a given area is an indication that they need an executive in that place that's operated at this level, or preferably in a higher level.
Which is the biggest scaling mistake that you have seen so far?
Biggest scaling mistakes: chasing shiny objects. Coming up with solutions that you think are applicable and adjacent to what you're already doing, in the hopes of it really kicking sales to the next level. Those are often a lot of mistakes. It's usually much more important to do just more of what you're already doing, instead of trying to add on stuff that you think is complementary to what you're doing. And getting outside of your core competency is a huge scaling mistake.
Which is the best business book that you have read so far?
My God, there's so many. I recently reread Good to Great, and I'm gonna put that at the top. It's Jim Collins, Good to Great.
Okay, I will read it. I will read it. Yeah, because I know that you have read a lot. So sometimes we don't have time to read. And how do you deal with that? How do you manage your time to have time to read?
I train a lot, and so I'm always listening to audiobooks. So I go for long 3, 5, sometimes 6 hour bike rides. That's an audiobook. Oh, at least it's half an audiobook, right there. And then when I run as well, I listen to sometimes I listen to music, but at least half the time I listen to audiobooks.
When I start listening to audiobook, I feel that my brain sometimes start flying and it goes somewhere else, and I cannot listen anymore.
Yeah, I mean,
is that also a muscle that you build with audiobooks, that you can't get concentrated and listen at all, like properly?
Yeah, you can. It is a muscle, but I mean, I do like the feeling of a book in my hand, and I don't have the discipline 100% dialed in, but I'm working on just starting off the day by reading for 30 minutes, because I'm also a big fan of getting sunlight and vitamin D. So, and for the last month or so, I've been going outside and just reading in the morning for 30 minutes. So I get both vitamin D and 30 minutes of just actually holding a book in my hand, because I enjoy that.
Okay, I will start doing that. I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna do that as well. Yeah, with a coffee, because that is sunny in London, so we can do it. But it's not gonna last long.
Yeah, exactly.
And now you said you have a family now as well. You have a daughter.
2 daughters, actually. We started very early. Our daughters are 33 and 26.
Oh, you don't waste your time, huh?
Nope, built to finish.
Built to finish. Well, it's been a very good conversation, Steven. We are almost heading to the end. Is there something that we didn't touch that you would like to talk?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I mean, if there's anybody listening that is that's a later stage company, what I do a lot lately is I perform an exit readiness assessment on 3 different levels. It's basically a questionnaire that founders fill out. It only takes 20 minutes to maybe 30 minutes max, and it gives them a really good perspective on potentially selling their business from 3 angles. First is a psychological angle. Are they really ready to part with their business? The second is a financial angle. How much money do they really need to come out of the sale of a business in order to fund the lifestyle that they want after the exit? And the third one, which is the most valuable, it's a value driver score against 8 drivers of enterprise value, and it helps a founder understand exactly how an acquirer will look at their business from all of the angles that you and I have been speaking about, Mario, from, customer concentration, founder dependency, recurring revenue, et cetera, et cetera. So these are, 3 very valuable reports that really open up a founder's eyes on exactly where they stand in terms of getting ready for an exit. So if anybody is in a later stage company and they're interested in going through this assessment, I'm happy to do that with them.
Steven, how do we contact you?
Yeah, best way is on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn handle and my Instagram handle is Steven Pivnik, one word. And there's also a lot more information with my blog, my book, and other things on my website, which is stevenpivnik.com.
Okay, so sounds pretty straightforward. How many companies do you have in your portfolio generally, max?
We only work with about 4 companies at a time.
4 companies at a time.
So 4 companies at a time, and then as part of the CEO project, there's a much wider ability to work at the CEO project, which is an ongoing peer advisory program. And we have about 100 members in the CEO project. So and room for more.
Do you also run the CEO project? Is that your idea?
No, that's not my no, that's not my idea. I was a member of the CEO project when I was growing my business, and when I sold my business, the founder of the CEO project asked me to come join him and lead a group. So right now, I have a bunch of CEOs in a group that I lead.
Okay, it sounds the CEO project. It sounds quite interesting. I will go. I will give it a go to read what's going on.
Yeah, it's a really great program, and the founder has a great book talking about business books. A great business book is called "Great CEOs Are Lazy" by Jim Slesher. Really good book.
Well, apologies if I don't. Sometimes my pronunciation is not good, or I'm very I'm blocked. You know, I need to be sick. But I didn't want to miss this episode, so that's why I'm here with you, Steven.
No problem.
And it was worth it. It was a very nice to hear your story. Apologies again. I was a little bit slow as well, not so energetic as I used to be because I don't feel well.
Totally
But
fine.
but thank you for your time for talking about this, which is very important. You know, about exits and all the diligence that they have to pass through, all the aspects that they have to work on to be 100% ready, and basically to increase the valuation, right, of their business and to be ready. You know, a successful person, I can see that you're a good person too, and sporty as well. And yeah, great. Well done. You wrote a book. You have done many things. Yeah, very well done, Steven. So for everyone who wants to work with Steven, just drop him, a message on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for your time. Good luck with everything. And yeah, let's keep in touch.
Yeah, thank you, Mario. I appreciate it.
Cheers. Bye-bye.